What is up, guys? This is Max Cut 4, and today I'm be covering the weapons, ranges, and armor for all the German tracked vehicles. Right, so this is going to include all your light armored vehicles, such as going up from the Panzer 1 all the way up to the Tiger 2 and the Jag Tiger. So this is going to be, they're all separated into ranges. Throughout the video, you'll be able to skip to ranges that you want, going up from 60 all the way up to like 385 for some of the artillery. So make sure if you need to, you can skip around. We're also going to be covering what phase of the war these guys are from. So right off the rip, we have the Panzer III Flammenwerfer. So this guy's going to get quite a bit of armor. He's got a whole armor of 80 and turret armor of 50. Some extra armor going up to 20 in places. As you can see, these riveted plates are in pretty cool. He's got two machine guns. He's a mid-war tank. First comes in the mid-war. And he's got a range of 60 and with his flamethrower main weapon and 120 with his good old machine guns. So this is an IS-2 you can see right here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to aim at the engine block. Let's see what we can do here. See, if you aim at the engines with these type of tanks, what you can often do is do some severe engine damage. As you can see, we've damaged the engine. Starting to have some issues already. And then once you damage the engine completely, as you can see, this engine is now on fire. This tank is kaput, so this tank's gonna die. It's gonna blow up, even though it's an IS-2. If you can get the back, do the engine damage, this tank will be completely dead. As you can see, the tank's blowing up and the crew's coming out. The guys are all gonna die. Actually, this guy surprisingly looks like he might have made it. Pretty cool. But as you can see, you will kill a tank and kill pretty much any tank, get the engine kill. So these guys can be cool in urban areas. They can get an ambush on some tanks that are being too aggressive. But a nice little mid-war tank. Now, moving into the next light tanks, we have the Panzer B. So this guy has got light armor. He's got a, first of all, these guys all have a range of 120 meters. He's got 14 turret armor, and he's got 13 of his hull armor. He's got dual MG13s. These guys are going to be very effective versus infantry. As you can see, it can't pen the light tanks, but it can pen the jeeps and the bikes. So this is going to be effective versus light vehicles and infantry. Very effective on Conquest. It's one of the first Panzer ones you can get. One of the first vehicles you can get. It's very effective fire support, but it will die to pretty much any anti-tank rifle or anything. Early war vehicle, of course. Next we have the Panzer I B. So this thing is a monster. It's got two MG34s. Same thing, it can't really pierce these light tanks, but it can mess up these jeeps, kill the engine. Same thing for the bikes. It's gonna be able to do some serious damage, and it's freaking heavily armored. This is a late war vehicle. It's got 80 armor on the turret and on the front. It's a little bit weaker on the sides, so just be aware of that. It drops off quite a bit, but this thing can tank some freaking hits. It's nice for fire support if you want to have a mobile machine guns platform. This can be very effective. With 80, not bad at all. So this thing has only got, as you can see, 8 turret armor and 10 hull armor. Obviously not very effective. It can, once again, it can pen the jeep, do some damage. This is captured a Boyce Panzer. I'm not exactly sure how to say it, but it's captured from the Russian. It was a T-37. So these are your little machine gun tanks. Not going to be very effective past the first couple engagements, minus maybe this Panzer 1. All right, next we're moving into the Panzer 2s. This is also a early war vehicle. Or actually, it doesn't really appear. You have to get it through capturing enemy vehicles. So, but it would be an early war vehicle because the Germans took a lot of them in Operation Barbarossa. Next, we have Panzer IIs, and then the Flak Panzer coming up. Panzer II C. So this bad boy has got a range of 150. So this guy has got so he's got armor piercing. As you can see, APCR, and he's got HE. So the HE has the same range. APCR is going to have 10 millimeters of penetration, and the AP is going to have 24 millimeters of penetration. He's got 14.5 armor on the turret and the hull, so he's not going to be able to take too many hits. But as you can see, he can actually penetrate some of these lighter vehicles. As you can see, he gets a little bit closer to the APCR and AP, so he can start penetrating through like let's see. Yeah, these lighter tanks can start penetrating on the turrets of the BT-7, BT-5s, and yeah, pretty much all the light vehicles. T-20 is gonna be a joke. That thing can rip through. This thing can rip through it. Nice, quick firing. Nice vehicle for early war. Next one is upgraded the Panzer II. So the Panzer II F. This thing has 30 turret armor and 35 hull armor. As you can see, it's a little bit bigger, got upgraded. Pretty much the same. It's got the same values for its weapon system. It's got an upgraded vehicle. It's got little logs on the side to help protect it a little bit from AT rifles, I guess, but not really gonna do a whole much. Like I said, 35 or 30 and 35, not gonna do a whole lot, and no real change to it. Next, we have the Panzer II L. This is actually a late war vehicle, the Luke's. So this thing is no change in the values. It can still do basically the same penetration values. It's gonna be able to destroy these light tanks and rip through them. At closer ranges, the APCR can do some decent damage, but more of a recon vehicle and anti-infantry harassment. Very good to use as recons and harassment, though. Next, we have the Flak Panzer IV Vervelwind. This thing is built on the Panzer IV chassis. It's got 80 armor on the chassis, and once you go up to the turret, it's very weak, very easy to penetrate. You can get, it's only got 16 armor, as you can see. It has 420 millimeters, loaded with AP. This thing can rip through some light tanks, as you can see. We're aiming at this light tank. Yeah. We can completely obliterate light tanks with this. This thing's a late war vehicle, though, so you're not going to be flanking that many light tanks, but if you can get a flank in, you can destroy some light tanks. Alright, moving in, these tanks are next going to be in the 160 range. So we're going to go ahead and evaluate these dudes. Alright, first off, we have Czech tanks. These first four are all tanks that are pretty much captured by the Czechs and then pushed into production by the Germans, because they actually had a lot of Panzer 1s, Panzer 2s. Panzer 3s were pretty low in supply, so these guys worked the bulk of taking Poland and France until the Panzer 3s and 4s can get more supply. Panzer 35, as you can see, has hull armor of 25, turret armor of 25. Not super great, but it'll be able to take some shots from some of the earlier Russian vehicles. As you can see, the BT-7, it can penetrate the turret and some places on the hull, the straighter places, but the main area is not really. As you can see, turret's pretty vulnerable, and then the what's it called, T-60 or whatever, it can penetrate it pretty much in most areas that isn't a slope. And obviously, all these light vehicles are gonna be cake for this thing to do. It's got armor-piercing, high explosive. A penetration of 25 millimeters, and APCR's got 21 millimeters, and 160 for all these vehicles is 160 for their HE range. Next one is going up from the Panzer 35T. That's Panzer 38. This is the next and best, greatest thing. So this one has a little bit heavier armor. For this version, it only has 25, 25 and 25. So it's pretty much the same armor as the 35. However, the gun is a little bit better, has 28 millimeters penetration with its armor-piercing high explosive, and then the APCR is still 21, same as this one. So just as the next level up, they got some track armor extra as well, so that might help you out a little bit versus AT rifles. Nothing much more than that. Panzer 38, also F, moving up a little bit. So these bad boys, the F and the G, are pretty similar. Both have the same weaponry as this one, 28 millimeters with the armor-piercing. High explosive, and then with the APCR you've got 21 millimeters, so these ones are pretty standard. But the only big difference for these guys is they got 50 millimeters of armor in the front plate and 50 millimeters of armor in the turret. So these guys can take some pretty good hits. These are also mid-war vehicles, so they also might be facing some T-34s and KV-1s. Once those come out, they're kind of obsolete, but anything below that, they can fight with the T-28s, the like T-70s and whatnot, but they just have to be strategic on their shots, because they can only penetrate 28 millimeters at that range. Next, we have the first version of Panzer III, the Panzer III SE. This guy's a badass. He's got double machine guns on the turrets, and he's got one on the hull. Okay, this armor is a little weak. He's got 30 and 30. This is an early war vehicle. Remember that, so bear with him. He's got armor-piercing high explosive, going out to 29 millimeters, and then IPCR 20 millimeters. Obviously, it's gonna be as you get closer, it's gonna have better penetration. But killing BT-7s, he's gonna be able to defeat the BT-7s and BT-5 pretty easily. Just be aware that they can also, oh my god, they can also do some significant damage to you. So just be aware of that. First Panzer III version, pretty cool. The dual machine guns is pretty awesome for killing the launcher. Not gonna lie. Next we have the Grill ASF-M. This thing only has 15 armor, so it's pretty weak. It's based on the good old Panzer 38 chassis. So it's just an unarmored Panzer 38 chassis, but it does have APCR and HE. out to 160, and the APCR is quite violent. It can rip through some light vehicles. As you can see, this one's already smoking. We're going to get it loaded up. And even this is a late war vehicle. It can hide behind a building and do some nice things. You're playing battle zones, you can easily kill light vehicles. It's like we set up both those guys, are all burning. But this thing can rip through some tanks, and then can switch to HE and rip through some infantry. It's a glass cannon though, so you make sure you keep it pretty well protected with this little 30mm. Next we have the Ostfront with a 37mm. It's got the Panzer IV chassis, 80mm of armor up front, and a little bit better than the Flak Panzer with its armor. It's got 25 instead of 16. It's got HE and it's got an AP. AP only has a penetration of 32mm. The grill had 33, so it's not great, but it's not bad for light vehicles like this. So light tanks, you can encounter any light tanks, you can rip through them. It's a late war vehicle, but if you do encounter light tanks, then you can just destroy them. Capture BT-7 series. This thing is not going to be able to deal with much of the light armor. The T-28, it's going to be able to kill some of the turrets, but for its counterparts, other BT-7s, it will be able to kill. Just keep in mind, this one is a captured vehicle. I think it appears in mid-war, but it should be available early war, honestly. Now we're going to be moving up to our next tier. These guys are going to be 170. These are your good old medium tanks for your heavier tanks for the early war, but should be all around mid tanks. So this is the next version of Panzer III, Panzer III Hell-Ostfront. So changes of this version. Still has 30-30 for the armor, but the armor piercing. So basically the shells got a lot better. So these guys can pierce Stewards, T-50 in certain spots. You have to be careful, tricky with the T-50, T-70, hull. If you get the bottom plate, and then T-28 can take it out pretty easily. Versus T-34s, this thing's going to struggle a little bit more as well. So you got 41mm with your APC HE, and then your HE is just goes out to 160 for this one. Actually, it's 170 AP, but 160 with HE. But then your APCR actually starts getting better at this point. You get 56mm of penetration. So then now you can see, you might be able to penetrate some places that you couldn't before, and it can APCR will just zip through it. So just be aware of that, or it might miss just like that. Next, moving up to the Panzer III Hell-Ostfront. This was an early war vehicle. This one is going to be a mid-war vehicle. Excuse me, this one, my apologies. These are both early war vehicles. Hell-Ostfront just simply is the same stats. One improvement is that it has, for the turret, it has 35, and for the hull, it's going to have a nice 60. And then it's got a little extra armor on here that helps around the sides. Just a lot better for fighting earlier vehicles in the mid-war as well. If you're going across BT-7, BT-7 is going to have some trouble with you, so just be aware of that. Alright. Next, moving up to the good old Panzer III Hell-Ostfront. Hell-Ostfront has 50 hull armor and 50 turret armor. It's a little bit better, so nothing really changes. Only significant changes is a little bit different hull armor. APCR and the AP are still the same. It's just a little bit newer version, as you can see. I think the armor they don't have an extra plate on here, as this one does have a little extra plate, so you just to be able to aware of that. Looks like it does have a little bit different radio setup, but overall, unless you guys know some significant changes, this one doesn't have a huge amount of changes. Maybe a little bit different engine, maybe probably. Nothing too crazy, nothing different. Alright, that I can be noticeable. Maybe it's the commander's views and gun sports. But that is, J is going to be medium war. The N is actually a late war. So this one is, which shoots heat rounds, and it also has smoke rounds as well. So this thing have 170 range, but the cool thing about this one is it has 115 freaking penetration. So this thing's going to be able to penetrate most of your mediums and a lot of your heavies, which just, as you know, it's going to have to be a lot closer. This thing is kind of a beast. And it's got some extra armor on there. It's got 50-50, but it's got 20 extra armor, as you can see, put on there. And then it's got the skirts to help with anti-tank weapons a little bit. But this is a little cool little tank, and if you can get some flanks in, it can be very, very effective in the late war. And it's pretty cheap in late war, so not bad. Panzer IV Aus V, first Panzer IV version available, has 30 turret armor, 30 hull armor. Not super good, but what is good is its penetration for early war. So this thing has 43 millimeters of penetration with its APC beast ballistic cap high explosive. So this is gonna be able to take out most of your light tanks from proper angles. As you can see, the hand struggle with that sloped armor, but then you move into it has heat can help quite a bit with its penetration. As you can see now, I can penetrate pretty much anywhere on these good bad boys because the penetration is 52 millimeters, which is just above the armor, and that slope's not going to help much versus the heat rounds. And as you can see, they're doing some significant damage to these guys. Just track that guy. He's lucky he didn't get a hull hit. But Panzer IV, first Panzer IV has a nice gun, still kind of a glass cannon with that low armor, but it's nice for early war. Next is a Panzer IV Aus 1. This bad boy has good old 50 and 50 same, or a plus up from the, this armor. So it has pretty good all-around armor, and then it's got pretty much the same penetration for its main, but its heat gets 81 millimeters. So this thing can actually start messing with Shermans at certain angles. I can mess with T-34s on the side, but from the front you're still going to struggle, especially if you can get turret shot. It might help on T-34s, but most T-34s are still going to be an issue for you. If you're close, this might be able to take out T-34 with your heat rounds, though, so pretty cool. Next we'll be moving into the Panzerjäger. This is the first real tank hunter that the Germans have. This thing is just pretty much a modified, I think it's a Panzer I that they put a gun on to help with them with Operation Barbarossa, and in other in France as well, to help take out tanks. As you can see, it has pretty good penetration, 48 millimeters, and it just has high explosive. So it will be able to have to hit certain angles for some of these tanks, and these ones with more of sloped armor. But versus like the T-28 doesn't have as much slopes, it's going to be able to penetrate and kill some of the guys. And it's pretty fast firing with its 4.7 millimeter pack. Not bad at all. It's really good for early war when it comes out. Especially when both these Panzer IVs comes out as well. This Panzer IV F1 is kind of a beast in the early war. Just kind of suffers a little bit versus T-34s at range. Next we have the good old Stug 3 Aus B. So this guy's going to be it's mainly an assault gun. Comes out early war, has good old 50 armor on the front. Pretty sick, not gonna lie. Got some extra size wood as well. So its gun is going to be 43 millimeters and then 52 millimeters with heat. So it can penetrate most early war vehicles that it will come up against with its main armor and with T armor to enhance it. It can help quite a bit. And as you can see, it has a smoke screen as well, which is pretty cool to protect it from small arms. Next, we're going to move up to the good old Stug 33. So this bad boy is going to be a mid-war. This is actually a vehicle built just for Stalingrad, fun fact. Pretty cool. They started building them, and then, Stalingrad got encircled, so he's fought in various units throughout the front. This one only has HE, but as you can see, this HE can be pretty powerful. It can take out, like, all the... Jesus Christ. I can take out a lot of the... basically kill the vehicles, and it kills all the crew and set the engine on fire on that one. It can do a lot of damage. It's a freaking 15 centimeter gun, 150 millimeter. This thing can do some serious work, and it does also have a machine gun to help defend itself. Not bad. It's a pretty nice mid-war vehicle. It can do some good work, and it's got 80 millimeters of armor, so it's pretty freaking good up front at least. On the side, it's not nearly as powerful, but the armor on the front, and it has a decent range. It can kill pretty much anything in the mid-war if you can get it close enough. So very reliable gun, very reliable assault gun. Next you have the Sturmpanzer IV. This thing is a beast with armor, 100 millimeters of armor, and at a slope which is going to get harder to penetrate. And you got some skirts to help you protect your tracks and versus the anti-tank rifles and whatnot. This one's 150 centimeter as well. So it just as much as the just as much as the Stug 33 is going to be able to obliterate stuff, this thing's going to be able to obliterate stuff. And it's got heavier armor. It's a late war vehicle. Great assault vehicle. Great for killing infantry. And I've killed many T-34s with this as well. Sniped T-34-85s with this. Not a bad vehicle at all. Alright, next we're moving on to some more of the captured vehicles. We got the Panzer 38735. It's just so this is really just, as you can see, a Hotchkiss French tank. Penetration is not going to be that great. It's only got 14mm penetration and at its max range, so it's not going to be able to really do much good. Versus Stuart's and what's not, but versus like some of the BT tanks, BT series, it could do a little bit more damage. It's got 40 hull armor and 40 turret armor, so it's not it's decently armed. It's just not going to really be able to penetrate much. It can be good for infantry support because it's hard to kill early war when it does come out, because the Germans using captured stuff in the Barbarossa. But overall, I wouldn't recommend it. There's another variant back there that has the freaking Stuka launchers, which is pretty cool in Conquest. If you really need more mobile artillery, and unique. Next we have the good old Panzer Kampfwagen 335 Sierra 739. This is another French tank. It's kind of like their cruiser tank that they tried to copy with the British, but obviously they made it very tall. This thing has got a 4.7 centimeter. It's going to struggle with pretty much penetrating most light tanks. It says it can penetrate right there, but I think it's a lie on the T-34, but most light tanks you'll have a little bit better time with, mostly when it's actually within range. So this thing can penetrate up to, let's see, 25mm. So yeah, the lighter and the ones that are pretty much burning already are the ones that you can really do some damage to. These and these ones over here are the ones that can really do damage to. The armor that it has on it is actually pretty decent. So it's got the whole armor is 47 and the turret armor is 56. So it can stand up to a little bit of a beating, but it's going to have to get close to get killed, which is the annoying thing. The next one is the French heavy tank, which is the B2. This thing's captured. It's got a 4.7, same exact gun pretty much as the other one has on the top. What the difference is, you got a 75, which 75 can be pretty effective. Surprisingly, the penetration on it isn't the best. It's only 16mm and 25mm for the top one, but the HE can be pretty effective, and it's got freaking heavy armor for early war vehicle. It's got 60 and 60, so getting through this thing is going to be pretty tough for enemy vehicles. So good support vehicle, not the best killing tanks though. Alright, let's move on to the next ranges. I'm into mainly good old. So now we're moving on to the mid-war vehicles. We got the good old Panzer 3 JL60. So this one's pretty badass. It's got a range of good old 180. It's got 50 and 50 for the turret and the whole little extra track armor on here. So these weapons are pretty advanced. They're gonna be able to take out a little bit better stuff. So they can get through 55mm of armor and 60 with APCR. The HE is going to be range of 160. As you can see, they are going to struggle with most parts of the Sherman. They can get through some parts if they're careful. But like T-28, they're not gonna struggle with that, and the Lee or Grant, they're gonna be able to get through that for certain parts if they just have to aim a little bit special. T-34s are still outclassed by, but if you can get the turret shots, you can still challenge it, but the hull is just pretty much unbreakable. So you just gotta be aware with the Panzer 3 Alpha J. Moving up to the let's see, Panzer 3 Alpha L. It's pretty much the same exact stats. Let's see. Yeah, pretty much the same exact stats. Only difference is, as you can see, this one's got a little extra armor put on. It looks like 20mm of extra armor put on here, so it makes it a little bit more bulletproof down here and up here. So effectively, like, could be 70mm of armor for some ammo types. So it's pretty much just an up armored Panzer 3. Then there's the last version that they made, the Aus M. So the Aus M is actually going to be late war. These two ones are mid war. This one's late. Only big difference on this one is, I mean, you got the armor still, and you got the side skirts now, so you got a little bit more protection from anti-tank. That's the only real difference. By that late part of the war, they usually weren't using these in the frontline service, and they got moved to support roles because pretty much every tank could take this out. Moving into the self-propelled gun, the Stu-42. This thing's kind of a badass. It's got full armor of up to 80, and it's got a little extra armor on here too. Cool thing about this guy is he's got heat rounds. So his heat rounds, they're going to be quite a bit more than the Panzer 3s. It has 116mm of heat ammo. I mean, it is high explosive. Let's see. So moving on to the Stu 42, this thing's got 80 freaking armor on the front, and it says 15 millimeters extra armor that's bolted on as well. It's pretty cool. Or maybe just that track that we're talking about. But this thing has heat rounds, so the heat rounds have a solid freaking 160 millimeters of penetration, and this thing is going to be up to, as you can see, it can obliterate T-34s. Only has 180 range, so you actually be outranged by the T-34s. But if you can get within range, this thing is a freaking menace. It's a late war vehicle, but it can take out pretty much almost every tank, even up to the heavier ones, if you can get close enough. Pretty awesome little guy if you want to keep him in the bag just for snipes and ambushes. Then it can be good if you can distract the enemy and get him in close. It's a pretty nasty vehicle. Next we have the Sturm Tiger, another late war vehicle. So this thing has freaking 150 frontal armor, and then it has some extra armor bolted on as well. So this thing is a freaking menace, hard to penetrate from the front for all the heaviest vehicles. Only has HE, of course, but you will see that it is very effective. Let's try not to kill all these tanks on the left side, so we're going to focus on. As you can see, tanks grouped up together, they're going to pretty much die. And didn't exactly kill all these tanks outright, but as you can see, destroyed all the tracks. Destroyed the tracks on this one, blew up the engine on that one, and it's pretty much ruined these guys. This guy's gun is kaput. All the guns are kaput. It's just pretty much destroyed everything internal. Some of these tanks might be recoverable, but for the most part, these tanks are going to be obliterated by that, especially if it landed directly on them, then they're going to just be done. A lot of damage from this thing. This thing's a nuke wagon. It can take out lots of vehicles at once, or lots of infantry at once, and it's heavily armored. Just gotta watch out for that range of only being 180. Next, we're gonna move into the 200 meter range. So we got a mid-war vehicle, Panzer IV F2. It's got 50 and 50, just like the F1. However, it has got the long barrel 75. So this thing is a beast because it can penetrate T-34s. So it's got solid 96 millimeters with armor piercing, high armor piercing, ballistic cap, high explosive, and it's also got 109 millimeters of APCR. All it carries heat. It's only range of 170 by 87 millimeters, and then it has HG, which is a distance of 180. But let's go ahead and show you guys the power of this thing. It can really get through the T-34s. So mid-war really bridges the gap between T-34s, because this thing outranges them by 10 meters, and it can just straight up murder them. So you're probably your best mid-war vehicle that you can buy straight up in battle zones, and then for the Conquest, it's also a very effective vehicle. Alright, so now we're moving up to the Alps J. As you can see, the armor has been improved. It's got 80 and 50, so this is the later versions. Now, the Alps G is also a mid-war vehicle, so this thing is same exact stats. It's got better heat round. It's got 115 millimeter penetration at 170, so it's got a better heat round. Can get through some heavier armor if you're closer to the 170, and it's got a better protected hull, just a little bit better vehicle. Arguably the best vehicle of the mid-war. Next, moving up to the J, same thing. It just got skirts on the side. This thing is pretty. I mean, moving up to H, this is got skirts on the side. It's pretty much only real good improvement, and it's also got. These are both late war Panzer IVs. It's got 98 millimeters off the rip for the armor piercing HE, and then 111 for the APCR. Heat stays at 115 though, so good all-around tank, not bad at all. J, only big difference is they supplies things, took off the skirts, and unfortunately they have it's a hand crank for the turret, so the turret can be a little bit slower than your electric turret, as you can see. So it's kind of a downgrade for a simpler production though. That's the Germans' late war for you. Next, we're moving into the first version of Stug, which is this good old Stug 3 Alpha F. So this is a mid-war one. First long barrel version, I should say. It has 50 millimeters of front armor. It's got 96 millimeters of penetration with the armor piercing high explosive, 109 with APCR, and 87 with your heat at 170 meters. So once again, you got another vehicle that's going to be able to penetrate a lot of things. It can penetrate Su-152s, turret of the Churchill, and it can pretty much all the Shermans. Your T-34s aren't going to be a problem in the war, as long as you can hit them, of course. But 50 armor is kind of weak, so T-34 is going to definitely take it out as well. But it can take out T-34s, which is pretty cool mid-war vehicle. Being upgraded at the early and the late. No super big noticeable changes here. As you can see, the machine gun being operated internally versus externally is one big thing. Save the crews a little bit, and the armor's been changed just a little, ever so slightly. Bolted versus welded, but they still got 80 on these guys versus the first one's only got 50. So these guys a little bit better armored, and the big difference from these late bad boys is they're gonna have actually, I stand corrected. The late bad boys have the same penetration, so it's 98 far range with normal shells, 111 with APCR, and 115 with heat. So pretty good. Next, you have your Marder 2. Now, the Marder 2 is on the Panzer 1 chassis. This is a mid-war vehicle. This thing is just basically a mobile Pack 40 before they put the Marder 3 on the Panzer 38 chassis. This thing is a freaking beast. It has only 10 turret and 15 hull armor, but this thing can take out T-34s, and it can challenge KV-1s from certain angles, if you can hit them, of course. But it is a freaking nice vehicle to have. It can snipe tanks. It can damage the KV series. It can damage the T-34 series. So it's a big win for the mid-war. Has 106mm penetration from the normal rounds, 123 with APCR, and 87mm with heat. But that's going to be a 170, so you have to get quite a bit closer for that. Overall, great vehicle. Going to be able to kill some T-34s pretty reliably with that, as you can see, throwing off some armor. Next vehicle you have is the Marder 3, which is basically the late war version, upgraded version from this, going to the Panzer 38 chassis, as opposed to the Panzer 1, a little bit more speed, and moving the engine to the back. To the front instead of the back. So the big difference in this one, Marder 3, pretty much the same penetration. Heat shells got better though. It's got 115 at 170. But still, you're still gonna be able to fuck up some T-34s with this. This thing's a nice cheap late war vehicle, and it can do some effective damage. Pretty fast reload too, so you can usually get a couple shots in. The T-34 is still trying to figure out what's going on. Nice little T-34 killers though. Next, you have the Hetzer, another Panzer 38 chassis. This thing's only got 60mm armor, but it is at a slope, so that will help you defend this bad boy. This armor piercing is not as good as the Mark 3, 98mm, with the normal armor piercing high explosive. APCR is 111mm, does not carry a heat round, so then HE is going to be 180. But as you can see, it's going to be more than enough to get through the turret of the KVs, and KV series, and T-34 series. So this thing is still deadly, and it does outrange the T-34s and the KV series. As you can see, some of those shots are unlucky, but you'll begin to zone in, and it's got a freaking remote control machine gun. That one did some damage right there. The remote control machine gun is pretty awesome. Next, moving on to the Jagdpanzer 4s. So the Jagdpanzer 4 early versus the Jagdpanzer 4 normal. These guys are pretty heavily armored. He's got 80 whole armor, some extra armor on as well, making this bad boy, and it is sloped armor, so it is hard to penetrate this vehicle. So the weapon on it is pretty much pretty similar. It's like the exact stats of the Hetzer I just read you, but does have a heat round, which is the 115mm penetration. Awesome. These are all late war vehicles minus the Marder 2, so certain things you're gonna be able to shoot the front of the certain angle with the other one, and obviously with the APCR you're actually gonna be able to pierce right through that. You can kill like the driver or something, or in that case kill the gunner. But not a bad vehicle. Its older brother is nicer though, the Panzer 4. This one basically just has the muzzle brake off, and it has heavier armor, as you can see. The armor penetration is pretty much the exact same though. Yeah, it just has missing a muzzle brake. For the different version, it's got up armor, so this thing is going to be able to murder some tanks. You struggle with these guys a little bit. But T-34s, like I said before, they can do some serious damage to T-34s. Next, we have the Panzer Kampfwagen 756 KW-40L43. This thing is a freaking menace. All right, it's got Mother of God. It's got freaking 105 turret armor and 105 hull armor. As you can see, the Germans try to put some extra armor in this as well. And it's got long barrel. This thing is a mid-war menace. It can take out its counterparts, the KV-1s. It can do some serious work for the KV-1s. You get the KV-1s in the turret, and the KV-1s can't really do shit about it. All they can hope to do is detrack and call an opponent, because this thing is pretty badass. It's got 96 millimeters of penetration, 109 with APCR, and 87 millimeters with heat. Obviously, it's going to get better as you get closer, but this thing's be able to harass KV-1s, and KV-1s can't really do shit about it. Obviously, it'll take a little while to get that shot that you want, but once you get that shot, it's freaking fantastic. All right, let's move on to the 210s. So Panthers work a little bit So moving on to the Panthers. So this one has a hull of armor of 80 and a slope too, and then 110 for the turret. So it's very, very strong on the front, but it does lag a little bit on the sides and the rear, of course. Pretty much all tanks. 210 meters max distance. And it's got 128 millimeters of penetration with armor piercing. High explosive, and then with its APCR, it's got 164, and then 200 meters range for its good old high explosive. But as you can see, these early IS-1 versions and IS-1s and IS-2s, it can't penetrate. It has to find a proper way to actually penetrate. Just kill the gun right there. But this thing can get through these IS-1s and 2s at certain angles, so it is a menace to pretty much anything below those guys. It's going to be able to kill them fairly effectively, and if you can manage to get a side turret shot, these things are going to die like it's no tomorrow, you know. You can see it just took out that IS-1. So Panther D, only real difference is it has 80 on the turret and 100 on the hull, a little bit different armor. That's really the only difference. Is the earlier version actually. This is the mid-war version, and this is a late war, and this is the late war. Panther Os G, that's 82 on the turret, 110 on the 82 on the hull, 110 on the turret, which is a little bit different, but it has 128 millimeters. This one doesn't have APCR, which is a little bit weird. It just has AP, piercing, high explosive, ballistic cap, and then it just has high explosive, which is max range of 200 meters. A little bit different. I'd say Panther Os A is the best version, then the G, and then the all Panthers are pretty cool though, because they can murder T-34s from range, and 210 versus most Soviet tanks only have 200. Same with Americans. All right, moving on to the Tigers, the badasses. So Tiger Os H. So this thing's gonna have 130 turret and hull armor. Got thicker armor than the Panther, which is pretty sick. Doesn't have that ankle, which is nice. Armor penetration is a little bit worse actually. It's got 123 and 156 for its APCR, and 110 for heat. So it does have heat though, which is pretty cool. And 210 has the same range as HE as its normal rounds. So this thing is going to be able to knock out T-34s. As you can see, it's going to struggle a little bit. It has to get certain shots in to take out the IS-1s and IS-2s because they outclass it a little bit. But versus all these KV-1s and T-34s, so they're going to be able to freaking, if it was in range, going to be able to freaking murder these guys. And KV-85 over there as well. Moving on to the good old E. It's got 130, 130. Only difference is in this one is this is the late war version. Looks like it has an MG34 for air defense. That's really the only difference that I see. If you guys know anything different, then let me know. Then there's the Ace, which is badass camo and has a more effective crew. Next, moving into the Stern Panzer. We got 13 armor. This is the early war menace though, 210 range. And this thing can freaking obliterate whoever it's shooting at. So if you manage to hit a tank straight on with this, it's just gonna be gone. The tank's gone. It's kind of like the Sternpanzer. It's not the most accurate, but when you hit a T-34 with this or a KV-1, it's gonna be just obliterated, and if you hit it multiple times, it's just gonna be down for the count. Last not least, we have the Panzer 470, which is just the Jagdpanzer with the Panther gun. So this thing is got 100 armor at a slope, which is pretty sick. Got 128 millimeters of penetration with the cannon, the main armor piercing, and 165 with the APCR, and 200 meters with for its HE. So it's pretty much just a Panther gun on a tank ashore. This thing can take out pretty much most tanks. I can see the Churchill. It's gonna have to get a turret shot to kill one of those. Same thing for any of these majorly up armored stuff. Pershing have to be a certain shot, but Jumbo is going to struggle with quite a bit for actual penetrating, but not a bad all-around. Actually, if you're playing battle zones, the German West doctrine can actually buy this from the main screen. It's the only doctrine that has this available to it from the normal tank call-ins. Next, we have the Tiger 2s, which are 220 range. Tiger 2 early has armor of 150, turn armor of 100. This thing is a freaking badass. Isn't the most badass one yet, because the turret armor is actually kind of weak. But the one has 1 round armor piercing, high explosive, and the max penetration is 184 millimeters. You're really not going to struggle to penetrate most tanks with this. As you can see, even the Jumbo can be penetrated by this. Freaking most Persian IS-2 Churchill front armor might. We'll verify. Nope, nothing is safe. Nothing is safe from this. Next version of the Panzer II, the more produced one, is the AS-B. It has 185 millimeters of armor on the front. That's the only main difference. Armor penetration values are the same. 200 millimeters. High explosive. These are late war vehicles. This is the one that you want, though, so you can't get penetrated from the front as much. These things keep them in max range, and you'll be able to do some massive damage with them. Next, you have the Nashorn, armor of 30. It's a glass cannon for sure. Same exact gun. You just gotta use it as a glass cannon, of course, because this thing is it's not gonna be able to take a hit. One hit, and this thing can die pretty easily. Next is the Jagdpanther. Jagdpanther has 80 armor at a slope, so not bad, but not the best of these ones in this class, but it has the same gun, so it's going to be able to murder freaking even the Super Persian straight on. Be able to do some serious damage. Jagdpanther is pretty maneuverable, though. As you can see, speed of 46 versus a lot of these 35, 40, and 30, 34. It's the fastest vehicle in this class, but it's also the lightest vehicle in this class. Next, we have the Ferdinand. Ferdinand is the first version before it became the Elephant. It doesn't have a whole MG, and then the guys have the guys that are normally in it have SMGs, which is kind of worrisome. So this thing is useless versus infantry pretty much. Got 210 for the HE on this one, but it's got freaking. That was a Pershing that just freaking blew up from it. Freaking amazing gun. 184, just the same as the other ones. But the big difference on this one is that 200 millimeters of armor. So just keep it at max range. Nothing's gonna be able to kill this except airstrikes and D-tracks. Take advantage of that for sure. Last but not least, we have the good old Jagdtiger. This thing is a massive menace. It's got a freaking what is it? 128 millimeter gun, and it's got 250 millimeters of armor. This thing is not really killable from the front unless you have an ISU 152. It's an IS-2 just being obliterated by that thing. This thing is a menace. Used to have 230 range, but obviously it was a little bit too much when it's be able to do that to IS-2s at max range. So this thing, just keep it at max range, scoot back for a shot, and then go forward, and this thing is just gonna be able to obliterate tanks like no tomorrow. I mean, if you have an angle, yeah, you might get deflected, but this thing, for the most part, is gonna be able to do that to tanks. Freaking amazing. Jagdtiger is awesome. Just don't let it get flanked by infantry, and don't let it get detract bombed. Just take care of it, and it'll do freaking wonders for you. Late war tank, of course. The Grill is also last three of these are light war tanks. Grill only has 15 millimeters of armor, but it's got 280 range. So this thing can be very useful in multiplayer and on conquest because it can shoot hella far. We're gonna see if we can hit between these jumbos with it. Aim a little bit. 150 millimeter. Aim just a little bit over, but as you can see, it can be very effective for murdering infantry in villages, taking out entire buildings, and if it gets direct hit on a tank, it's just gonna murder the tank. Pretty awesome. Next one's a little bit self-propelled howitzer. It's the Wesp. This one actually has a 105, a little bit smaller shell and round, but it's gonna be able to fire a lot faster, and it's got 355 range, so this thing can fire way freaking far. 355. And then out to the abyss it went. This one has a little bit heavy armor, 30 millimeters still. If he gets hit, it's gonna die. So make sure you protect these bad boys. And the biggest one, kind of the Bumblebee is what it's been called, but the Hummel has a max range of 385 and has max armor of 30. So once again, don't let it get hit, please, for the love of God. But this thing's got 155 millimeter. It's gonna be able to do some serious damage and fuck up some counter battery. But I hope you guys learned something from this, and I hope you guys know what you can penetrate with these vehicles now. You'll look at the armor values of the Soviet tanks. I'll be putting out a guide on with Excel for these pretty soon, so be looking out for that. Hope you guys liked it. Thank you for your time. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and goodbye.